So a couple of things we just seen there. We should have seen the alert popping up with some text displayed in it. As I said, that HTML5 type text JavaScript, it's not required, okay, for HTML5. It is required for some of the older stuff, but we shouldn't be doing anyhow. But if you're looking on the internet, you might see that and be wondering, hey, how come he's using that and Peter isn't? That's the why. You have to terminate each line of code with a semicolon, right? And a .js file, and indeed that that's inside the script must only contain JavaScript, right? So you might say, yeah, grand Peter, understand that. You will find as you're doing all of this, you're getting between HTML files, CSS files, JavaScript files, stuff going all over the place. Just keep it JavaScript for JS files only. Now, variables, okay? So we have obviously variables in every programming language, and everybody's should be at this stage familiar with the word variable. In JavaScript, you must declare a variable, and you must declare it using the keyword var, okay? So this is nothing to do with video referees or anything like that, okay? This is short for variable, okay? So var. In JavaScript, okay, you don't have to, unlike Java, where you have to cast or actually specify what the variable type is. You don't have to do that in JavaScript, okay? In actual fact, some would say that JavaScript considers variables, and as with nearly everything else, to be objects. They typically will consider a variable similar to a string unless it's told otherwise, okay? Now this will come and cause us some kind of problems when we're starting to do things like mathematical functions where we're adding bits and pieces together, okay? But for the moment, just think of it that you have to, every time you define a variable, you have to define it using the keyword var, var. So a couple of examples there. You could have var name colon, which is name, or you can actually do, as well as declaring the variable, you can actually assign a value to it. So I could do var name is equal to, within quotes, Peter. Now, the quotes that come up here are, Microsoft's nice way of making, 66s and 99s. So if I was just to copy that, do Control C and Control V, that wouldn't work inside the browser because it's looking for either single quote, start and end, or double quote, start and end. That there is actually a 66 and a 99, so it's actually a different character set, so it wouldn't be interpreted properly. So be very wary about copying and pasting stuff from notes. Now, another thing is that variable names in JavaScript are case sensitive and they should start with a letter, okay? And so uppercase, lowercase, F uppercase, N for name is different than FNAME, all lowercase. So be careful about that. You just need to be very much aware of what's going on with it. Now, normally, as it will consider a variable to be a string, so we have to be careful with maths, and we'll get onto that later. To join or to concatenate two strings or more, we use the plus symbol, okay? So this is where we get into some of the differences with different programming languages. With JavaScript, to join two strings together, we put a plus between them, okay? And if we want to, in different languages, we sometimes use a period to join them together, but JavaScript, it's a plus. And again, the strings can be within either a single or a double quote. Obviously, you can't start with a single and end with a double, or start with a double and end with a single, but either of. And I think I would have mentioned this, or if I didn't, I'll mention it now. As you develop your programming style, okay, go with what you're happy with. If you always use single quote, always use a single quote. If you're going to use double quotes, always use double quotes. When we start looking at some of the stuff later on the server side with PHP, it gets even a little bit more confusing. Okay, so the handiest thing with all of this, I find with programming, is to set your standards, okay, and do things the way you normally do things. If you're into somebody who's into like using underscores to separate words or parts of words and variable names, will stick with that. If you're into using caramelized text, stick with that, okay? So what we're going to do now is, from the previous example, we're going to turn this page and try to use two variables called fname and surname. Okay. So this is what's happening here, right? So I've got this is the solution, and what I want you to do was not to turn the page, right? Before you turn this page, I should put that in higher text, right? So if you have turned the page, do what I did, jump back a bit, right? I want you to try to display your name using two variables, okay? One variable, fname, will contain your first name, and the second variable is going to be surname, which will contain your surname, okay? And what, again, I want you to do is to change this so that it will actually display in the alert, and you can do it either that way or this one here, whichever, which one has it? You do it this way here, or the previous way where you had the alert directly in the code, so that when you run the page, it'll come up and show you your first name and then your second name as you would like it shown, obviously with a space in between and so forth. You okay? So we'll give, say, another 4 or 5 minutes for that, and then we'll come back with the solution. Now, I know I've shown you the solution there, right? Try to do it without looking at the solution, but obviously if you need to, I can't stop you. Okay?